Thank you for your patience, and I'd like to welcome you all in this inaugural session of the Countdown Talk series that we have begin from today onwards. The idea behind the Countdown Talk is to give a platform to the industry in terms of helping them understand the best practices, sharing actionable insights, exploring innovations, and sharing some use cases that can help reduce carbon footprints and transition to sustainable operations. So we might be doing this session once in a quarter, but at the moment, we are looking forward to this engaging session today. We have with us Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy, who is joining us from US. He's the CEO of Reignite Future. He's a well-known speaker in the industry. We have Dr. Sundaram. He's joining us from Dubai. He's the location intelligence expert with PwC Middle East. And we have Niroj Mohanty, my good friend, and is a partner in crime for the Countdown Talk series that we are beginning from today. He's the CEO of Core CarbonX. So before we begin, I'd like to invite the speakers to talk about themselves and introduce themselves, sharing their profile. Dr. Satyam, would you like to talk about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Vishwendra. It's good to be on the panel with Niroj. I actually happened to bump into him a couple of months back in IIT Bombay when I was visiting there, and now we are again on this panel. And the world is pretty small if you think of it, because I met him in a completely different context. I think it's an important topic actually. So as we look at it, the carbon footprint that's changing in the world, it's pretty interesting, because what you see that's happening, and I think most of the people who are going to listen on this call also are probably excited about artificial intelligence. And then ChatGPT came. Now everybody's going crazy with generative AI, but nobody's thinking about the carbon footprint of it, right? So I'm going to, for my profile also, I'm going to share a slide so that it's easier for people to understand where I come from. I hope my slide is visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks again. And so my background is I have a PhD in quantum mechanics applied to biophysics a long time ago, actually trying to understand what is called the phenomena of energy conversion. And so if we actually are able to take that theory of quantum mechanics and the formulation, we could actually design what is called artificial photosynthesis. People for the last 30 years have been trying to do that, but no success yet, a system that can actually do artificial photosynthesis at least the chemistry level. But in theory, it's possible, because somebody has already created it once. That's God, right, in the leaf. So that's the background I have in science, and many years of research in nanotechnology and many other fields. And then I became a technologist, and probably started doing what now people call AI in year 2000, one terabyte of data roughly per day. And then turned into an executive, turned around some companies. Last 10 years I spent at the energy company. Some of you might know Halliburton. I set up the first center of AI digital transformation for them, grew it into a big organization, and just took retirement last in October or September, October last year. I took retirement from there after 10 years of being that technology fellow. In the process, I worked with almost 30 companies in the world. Interesting dynamics when it comes to how people talk about technology, carbon footprint, ESG. So I'll share some of those insights as we go forward.
Thank you, Dr. Satyam, and thank you so much for taking us through your profile. In fact, while you were talking about the role that you have, played in the industry for so many years, it reminded me of the latest news wherein a climate scientist has become a president of a country, Mexico.
Right.
So there's a lot of traction now for experts who are in the climate and data science domain, and they are being recognized by the government and the industry equally. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of traction for climate experts across the globe. Dr. Sundaram, would you like to talk about yourself quickly?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Thank you for inviting me for this talk, and thank you to Dr. Satyam for introducing me to you. So I've been working as a spatial data scientist or location intelligence expert recently since I joined PwC. But in reality, I started working on this spatial analytics since 1990 when it was first introduced in our institute at IIT Roorkee. So I've been working on spatial technology since that time. And my first project, in fact, was related to this subject, which was on the earthquake-induced hazard zoning in 1996. So since then, I've been working on this image processing, analytics, and spatial data science, you can say, on that technology. And since then, I've been working in various organizations across the Middle East, research organizations. In fact, I supervised a PhD and a master thesis on heritage conservation using spatial technology. And then I've been working for a long time in Qatar at Public Works Authority, where I was responsible for engineering information, providing support to the engineering departments, planning, designing, and construction, as well as asset management departments with the spatial technology using all the latest technologies, LiDAR technology, satellite technology, navigation technology. And recently I moved to PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC Middle East in Dubai, and I've been working there as a location intelligence expert, providing support to consulting to various organizations related to PwC. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sundaram. Yeah, it's a very rich profile, and I'm glad to see that we have such an experienced people on joining us today as a speaker. Niroj, do you want to quickly talk about yourself?
Yeah, just. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'll just share my screen. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm the founder and managing director of Core CarbonX Solution Private Limited. So we have been working for the last 17 years in the carbon and climate market. So I have completed my BTech in textile technology and MBA from IIM Mumbai. And for the last 19 years, I've been working on climate change strategy and carbon market. In fact, I'm currently also, in addition to the Core CarbonX, I'm also currently supporting the Ministry of Agriculture in developing the carbon market under the agriculture sector in India. So I have been extensively have experience in the climate change strategy as well as in the carbon market, various domains that includes starting from the energy sector to the nature-based solutions, including the agriculture sector, blue carbon economy, carbon removal productivity, including the biochar, as well as also basalt application in the soil productivities. I'm looking forward to further discussion. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Niroj. Thank you so much. And of course, I have slides, but I can't share my slides because of technical issue. But quickly about myself, so I'm a founder and CEO of GrowthSutra. GrowthSutra is an organization which is crafting insights, executing programs, and helping SMEs grow in the dynamic environment which is today. I've been, we were together. I and Niroj, we were together at IIM Mumbai. But apart from that, I'm a chemical engineer from NIT Warangal. I worked with oil and gas companies, and then I switched to tech companies because of the increasing trend in technology. So now, as part of GrowthSutra, I'm helping tech and climate advisory companies in their growth journey. All right, so let's, as we have an elite panel today, I'm sure we are going to have an engaging and very interactive discussion, and you'll have a lot of insights and takeaways from them, which you could action them, and you can kind of emulate them in your profiles and the projects that you have been working on. We have seen in the market, in the industry, especially in terms of the climate change and the impact that is happening, especially if you look at Indian market, Indian scenario. For the first half of the year, we have seen a very depressing weather story. We had seen very strong heat waves. Delhi for the first time has reached 52.5 degrees centigrade. We have seen flash floods in northeastern region. We have also seen forest fires in the northern part, especially in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, so on and so forth. And all in all these various natural calamities that's happening, that's also impacting our local ecosystem. So in fact, the heat wave in Delhi, that has actually increased demand for power. So in fact, Delhi reaches the 8,300 megawatt mark for the first time. We also had a water shortage, which is also an direct impact due to the heat wave, and this is happening across various cities. In terms of industry emissions, when we look at globally, industries are contributing almost 24% of global GHG emissions. However, in India, this contribution grows to 29%, especially from an India GHG emission perspective. There's been a report from IEA, International Energy Association, globally, wherein they mentioned that the emission actually has grown. Is the CO2 emissions have grown in 2023 by 1.1%, which is far from failing rapidly, as it required to meet the global climate goals set out in the Paris Agreement. Even the developed countries, while there's a kind of a slowdown in terms of carbon emissions because the clean energy adoption, but in developing countries, the emissions are increasingly growing, and especially China and India, and that could be because of the energy intensive economic growth, which is compounded by unfavorable weather. So due to that, the increase in the CO2 emissions have grown up. While India's per capita emission is still very low, it's at around 2 tons, which is less than half of the world average of 4.6 tons per capita. However, the CO2 emissions is growing very fast, and one of the reasons is in the energy intensive industries, and that's what we are going to talk about today. The decarbonization of industry certainly provide a lot of great opportunity, especially when you look at from the perspective of economic opportunity. As per McKinsey and companies could capture between $9 trillion to $12 trillion in annual sales if they adopt decarbonization of their operations and product offerings. If they fail to do so, they may have a 20% risk in losing out their profits. So their economic profit may reduce by 20% by 2030. So that's the kind of risk that we see if the decarbonization has not been adopted. So while we have an elite panel today, the topics that we will be covering are leveraging data science for decarbonization. So you'll see a lot in terms of how data science and climate analytics can play a role in decarbonization. So that's going to be covered by Dr. Satyam. Then Niroj is going to be talking about strategic approaches to industrial decarbonization, wherein he's going to talk about scope 3 emissions and the roadmap for industries, especially in terms of their decarbonization journey. Dr. Sundaram is going to be talking about a very interesting topic, which is on location intelligence, and he would talk about certain use cases in terms of carbon mapping and renewable investment assessments with the help of location intelligence. And in the end, we are going to have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please share your questions in the comment box. We'll pick those questions at a later stage, but in case if there's any burning question, we might pick these questions during the session itself. So without taking much time, let me invite Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy to talk about data science in decarbonizing the industries. Dr. Satyam, over to you.
Thanks, Vishwendra. So what I just have a very simple agenda to talk. Couple of things, terms like climate analytics, decarbonization, what and why, and then role of data science. And then we'll talk about what this data ecosystem should look like, where it is now, how does the technology can help, and then come up with some what I call the case study from various different sectors, and see how that. So it will be a little bit of a higher level thing, but I think it should encourage people to look at these things in more details and help really improve the conditions in the country. So what's happening? If you look at it, in fact, very interestingly, there was actually a report in I would say 2016 in India, which actually talked about the impact of various activities and equivalence to trees, like how many trees, so, right? And if only people had actually looked at it, maybe we would not be in this situation, right? The extreme temperatures, it's not only in India, but it's actually happening in many other places. Unpredictable rainfalls. I think, in fact, last couple of months back, I was stuck in Dubai during those very special rainfalls. So and that happened in Saudi as well. So what can we do? And of course, I think Uttarakhand was burning. Here, of course, in US, the California keeps burning, and Australia. Every other year, you hear big stories, um, and uh, and I think the next few months, I think we will see even more seismic activities, which is now one can look at them as what I call disconnected activities, but I think they are not disconnected. They are actually connected in many ways. Um, if some of you know what is called a butterfly effect, uh, this is butterfly effect on the time scales, not on the physical part, and that causes the problem. Now, the term climate analytics is used, and people consider that as a subject. Uh, in some sense, it's all a very simple thing. It's actually about how do I look at the data that exists, and so how can I understand the various factors and actually mitigate the risks. Uh, these things currently, at, to a large portion, is done in isolation, and hence we have some of the practical challenges of really reducing the risk. The third term that is important is decarbonization. Now, what does that really mean? Very confusing. Some people will call it carbon capture, sequestration, and storage. Correct, but it's actually more than just carbon. It's the other gases as well involved in it. So depending on who you are talking to, in general, it's not just about carbon and carbon dioxide. It is the complete set of things that really need to be done, that need to be taken care. And then the process is actually how do I reduce the emissions of these greenhouse gases, and or how can I stop from a certain workflow or process. Now, if we really want to make an impact, it's not that we don't know how to do it. People have a lot of tacit knowledge along these processes, but one of the biggest challenges when you have tacit knowledge, but you really don't know how to implement it correctly. That's when data science comes into the play, because the whole function of data science is actually to look at all the what I call hidden inefficiencies and solve for them. And for that, one has to actually use the historical data, however good or bad it may be. Those of you might be doing data science, or you talk, or you listen to talks. Everybody will say for doing data science, you need good data, but nobody knows how to get the good data. So that means you have to do the science on the data with what data you have, and then try to improve it. You'll understand the gap. Hence, playing on historical data is one of the most critical things. Actually, it is the most valuable thing to do, and then you can actually define how the new data can be generated. which is more meaningful. And then you can do real-time predictions, and then you can actually build the forecast models which are more sensible. If we wait for a good data to come, then we can wait forever, right? And once we do that, then actually we can come up with plans to actually reduce risk seriously. So one day we can leave the earth better than what we have. Right. So if we keep that goal, then maybe we can do something. Right. So what if you look in the field of what is data all about? What's the state of it? Currently you can look at data whether at an country level, whether it is at an industry level, whether it is at organization level, or whether it is in a division level. The silos are everywhere. So data is highly fragmented, right? Appropriateness of that data, depending on who's controlling the data, they may think that it is appropriate for them, but does it actually play into a big ecosystem? That's a big gap, and hence it takes so long to actually take that data and create any value. So this is the current state, or as I call, fact about the data. It's fragmented. Appropriateness is appropriate depends on who's controlling it, and time to value is significantly long, right? But what can we do? We should probably understand how the data is generated, right? And what I call democratize the data. That means bring the accessibility of the data out of the silos, either at least at the company level. If not, you can't make it industry level. At least bring it up to the organization or enterprise level. And of course, when you do that, you will actually see the high complexity and multidimensionality of the data, which can be really help you to generate what I call the exponential value, right? But then if you look at what data sets, right? Let's start at the very basic, natural resources data. Lots of publicly available data is there, and you can actually connect it with your own enterprise data and see how new patterns can emerge. As we actually deploy emerging technologies, those will create another set of data, which is from satellites, drones. One is the actual process related data. Then the devices themselves are generating data, which can give you some more insights. And then you can actually create models, and those models will give you what is called data in motion, and those become very important. And then last is the location. Location is very important because at the end of the day, we are trying to solve the last mile problem. And like example is, I think Vishwendra was saying that there is no water issues in Delhi. But this is, if you look at in India, it's pretty much everywhere. And if we don't actually analyze it, then we will have problems. And hence this location intelligence becomes very important in pretty much how we analyze the complete data sets, right? But how do we do that? Most people will say, oh, let's do artificial intelligence, machine learning. Okay, I think the way to do this, use all aspects of the analytics value chain, whether it is the descriptive analytics, the predictive analytics, or the simple data mining, or then go all the way to artificial intelligence. And now, of course, today we can actually use generative AI in a much powerful manner, especially on a large amount of unstructured data, which is very important, right? If you why generative AI for unstructured data is important, because people who write this policy and planning, they just put buzzwords there which are very difficult to practically implement. And now I think we can actually bring those things to some sensibility, and this will help us to really accelerate the process, optimize the workflows, or find new solutions for mitigating the risk. But what is the most important part of this ecosystem is actually the talent, right? Because the talent needs to know the historical aspects of this process. They have to be educated on it. The people who are working in the field now, they need to really understand and explain it to the people, leadership, and then actually the models that they've built has to be now quantified by the next and bring the next generation of talent into the process so that you can actually see how this can evolve. What is happening is nobody is training people. Most of the academic classes are outdated, and I think it's time to evolve them. So talent will certainly play a significant role in actually changing the dynamics. Now, if you look from a simple picture point of view, right? This is how you can look at. I put this picture in a very simple kind of a format so that we can go from where the natural phenomena is to our behavior, right? All these things, all these icons, most of them are very common icons you would know, but all these things are source of data, right? The seismic activities, the earth, the minerals, mining, all these industries are generating some kind of data which can be very helpful, right? The ocean, the forest, the solar, the sun, the sky, right? And then of course agriculture, people, and then of course the uh, fuel, the power plants, and then transportation, factories, houses, eventually all these. If you really want to optimize, you have to really understand various data sets associated with these fundamental aspects of the ecosystem, right? And then let's look at it, how data science can really help. Some examples, right? If we look at energy sector, grids generate high amount of greenhouse gases, and of course fossil fuels are part of it. Data science can help you to optimize all these grid assets so you can reduce your greenhouse gases. You can actually find the right optimal mix of various energy sources, whether it is fossil fuel, renewables, and actually what I call it will require us to focus on decentralization of energy units or power units, because right now the most of it is centralized, and it really causes much more greenhouse gases than anything. So there is this concept of decentralization being looked at. Understanding weather patterns, right? There have been so many models, but these models become outdated very fast. But if you actually use the correct set of algorithms, create more scenarios, and use the right kind of computing power, whether it is a high performance simulations, and combine it with the future of what I call the quantum computers, that will be probably a reality in about 3 to 5 years. We could actually look at this what I call more appropriate weather patterns, which will help us in really better forecasting. Now, the CCUS part is very interesting because for the last almost 70 years, oil and gas industry has been doing reservoir modeling. Most of this software that they use is pretty much outdated, and is being used now for understanding how to really store carbon in it. I think that is an area which requires modification, use of algorithms, and use of new formulas, so to say, to actually look at the interaction that takes place under the subsurface, and that will lead to what is called the next generation of field planning. And then actually we can really talk about the short-term and the long-term storage solutions for carbon in these areas, whether it is from obtained from oil and gas industry or from mining industry, right? Then in fact, one of the most important thing with the climate change aspect is the workforce productivity. Very few companies actually look at it, But if you look at, and I think in India you would see that, right? If it's the weather is hot, how effective we are in working. But this is a global phenomena, and I think that one of the parameters or set of parameters related to climate is not being really analyzed in terms of workforce productivity. But I think that will become the future, and I think we saw some of that because of COVID, like changes. In some sectors you saw increased productivity, in some sections you saw reduced productivity, but it's not a systematic study anywhere yet. And of course, automation for buildings will be critical as we go forward in many ways. Like one is, how do we put new materials or nanotechnology, nanomaterials will be important to make these sustainable buildings. So both these topics are critical for humanity and the planet. Exponential technologies besides simple data science, I think that location intelligence, nanotechnology, robotics, algorithmic materials, they will actually play a significant role. And that also requires change in how we think about leadership in this field. And that is what I call exponential leadership is needed. So in some sense, this is a great time to be part of this CO2 countdown talk, because I think it's an important aspect to actually address, and I hope some of you, those who are listening, will take these things forward.
Thank you, Dr. Satyam. Thank you so much. And I really like some of the slides, especially how you can what are the different elements that can be considered within climate analytics. In fact, when you talked about CCUS, carbon capture and storage, I read a report wherein it was mentioned that 90% of the carbon emission can be reduced by deploying CCUS. I think there's some study which has been done. So there's a great potential for some of these technologies, and especially these are built with data science and climate analytics. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'll request participants, in case if you have any questions for Dr. Satyam, please post it in the comment box, and we are going to pick those questions in the Q&A section. Let me quickly move to Niroj. Niroj, he's going to talk about the leveraging, strategic approaches to industrial decarbonization. So he's going to be focusing more on decarbonization strategies and in the industrial use cases. Niroj?
Sure. Thank you, Vishwendra, and thank you, Dr. Satyendra, for setting the context. Overall, my focus of the talk will be on the strategic approach to the industrial decarbonizations. As we know, and already Vishwendra has highlighted, and Dr. Satyendra also highlighted, that today we are facing the consequence of the climate change, and it is one of the biggest threat to all of us. When we look into the climate change, the reality is there in front of us. When we talk today, some part of, like, take a case of Telangana, we are facing rain, and some part of the India, including North India, is facing heat waves. So the way the climate is changing is very unpredictable, and now all of us has realized that there is a change happening. First, we must need to adapt to the changes, but in addition to adapt to the changes, also we must need to act where we'll able to reduce our emissions and contribute towards the climate change impact. Today, when we see it, all part of the world, because of the climate change, the companies, institutions are getting impacted. Their operation is getting impacted, both in terms of resources, in terms of their productions, in terms of their profitability. The becoming scarce because the cost of resources is also increasing, because we have seen devastating impact associated with the climate change. In addition, we have seen last year, like take a case, we have seen the flooding that has happened in Chennai or the flooding that has happened in Bangalore. And as you know, there is an increasing cost for insurance. it is an insurance with respect to the flooding or insurance with respect to the company, the cost of insurance is going up. And we have seen greater amount of physical risk is coming up. There is a greater amount of damages happening. There is a losses happening. All part of the world we are facing this consequence. In addition to that one, as you see, when we look into the climate change, there is also another perspective has coming up. Like Vishwendra has told, now the climate scientist has become the president of a country. So this is the new reality. Unfortunately, in our current election that was concluded, we didn't discuss about anything on the climate change. But you see, all a part of the world, there is an increasing discussion on the political circle about the climate change, and the parties are taking the stance that what has to be the regulation, how the regulation will function, what has to the country need to do, how the regulatory framework need to be developed. And we can see this regulatory framework is coming up increasingly. This year, India is already has started, and we're expecting we'll see a domestic carbon market. Already we have seen in India as a part of the business responsibility and sustainability reporting, in the top 1,000 listed company report their climate change component. So we can see increasing amount of regulatory framework that is coming up. In addition to that one, we have seen all part of the world, there is a reputational damage is coming up. More and more shareholders are demanding now accountability for the company in terms of their climate risk, in terms of their accountability, in terms of the kind of emissions they're emitting. And as you know, majority of the focus of the emission is happening on that is basically we are trying to address when we talk about a climate change, those 7 greenhouse gases, including CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, perfluorocarbon, hydrofluorocarbon, sulfur hexafluoride, and nitrogen trifluoride. But majority of the focus when you see the contribution, the gases that is coming out, one is the CO2, the other one is methane and nitrous oxide. Industry is contributing majorly on methane as well as on the CO2. But when we look into beyond the overall boundary, period boundary, we can also see other greenhouse gases also there, which is part of the value chain emissions, and we can see part of the emissions that is coming up as a part of the industry's own initiatives. The other one is that which is beyond the industry's project boundary, and those emissions are also now making a greater amount of impact on overall portfolio of GHG emissions. So there is a greater demand is coming up from various stakeholder and shareholder for the industries, for the institution to take an account of those emissions that is coming from the portfolio. In addition, we are also seeing climate litigations all part of the world. New kind of litigation is coming up. Corporates are becoming now a litigant, and there is a great amount of liability that is coming up on the corporates. That is, you can take a case of the petroleum industries, you can take a case of the power industries, and this is a new reality. So the corporate and institution need to prepare themselves. On all part of the world, if you can see, there is a regulations coming up. So that means we must need to prepare ourselves and mainstream the decarbonization as a part of the journey. So when we look into the decarbonization as a part of the mainstreaming and decarbonization as a part of the journey, that's one of the components which also helps us in managing our climate risk. So in the net zero pathways, when we look into that one, as you know, we have already signed, all countries have signed the Paris Agreement, and the goal of the Paris Agreement is that to limit the global temperature increase to below 2 degrees centigrade, while pursuing efforts to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees centigrade. That means we need to act, we need to reduce the emissions, and we need to act in a manner by 2050. Our emission has to be equivalent to something in the year 1950. That means we need to reduce our emissions to around 5 gigaton of CO2. So if we want to do it, it looks like impossible, but we need to act, because considering the current scenario, by 2050, our population in comparison to 1950, it will be almost 3 times of that one, and GDP will be 10 times of the 1950. So that means we will contribute more and more amount of emissions, and we need to really act. We need to really see how the transition is possible, how best we can really develop our portfolio in a pathway where we'll able to reduce the emissions. And all part of the world, including India, China, US, and European Union, and all major countries has already taken up the targets. India has already, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Mr. Narendra Modi ji, we have seen that India has committed for net zero for 2070. And that means all the corporates has to really act and need to reduce their emissions if the country need to achieve the net zero by certain years. So that requires the country and the companies and the institution has to act together and has to develop a strategy which will help all of us in achieving the net zero targets by certain years. And we can see the company has started realizing the climate risk, and unless we don't act now, so we'll be left out. There is increasing peer pressures are there, increasing investor pressures are there, including institutional investor, all the asset owners of the world, including the pensions fund, sovereign wealth funds, are increasingly finding that their fiduciary responsibilities are aligning with the investing in a net zero future. So, but when we look into this decarbonization, there is a one roadblock is that there is currently the technology that is need to be available for decarbonization is still not developed. That means we need to really relook into our business, our priorities, and currently all part of the world, all business community, their priorities are different. There are multiple priorities are there, and on first thing is that it's a profitability. Of course, profitability has to be there, but not at the cost of the humanity. So the business need to relook into that one. How do they establish the business priorities? Unless they don't redefine it, few years down the line, possibly they'll have a difficulty in sustaining their businesses. We have seen many company has collapsed, and the pathway will continue. One of the major reason in the future, the collapse of the company will be that if they'll not put forward their strategy to decarbonize themselves, then it will create a critical risk for the company. Today, we can see, although all the company has started realizing that there is a climate change and we must need to act, we need to decarbonize our portfolio, but we can see increasing complexity and lack of coordinated approach from the board, from the unit, from the entity, and they're not able to take out the whole conventional thought process that how we can really decouple our growth and emissions and make our company profitable. Another aspect is happening with the considering the current scenario where we have a new challenges, new kind of demands coming up. Many company or many institution, there is a constraint in terms of budget and investment. So these are the blocks which is creating a problem. And as I already have told, the technology and tracking impediments is also there, which is critical. Many of the sectors, the technology is not well developed. There is a limitation how much we can really decarbonize a portfolio. In addition, we also have a lack of internal skills. The skill set is missing. Although during the last few years, we have seen number of stakeholder, number of resource persons has come to the decarbonization decarbonization portfolio, but still understanding the decarbonization, bringing in the technology and addressing and making the company in the pathway of decarbonization has its own limitation as of today. And that means we need to really build up the skill of the resources and put forward great amount of resources to address the decarbonization strategy. In addition to that one also, for any decarbonizations we do, we need to have a appropriate data management system, as my other speaker has already mentioned, Dr. Satyam has already mentioned, that we do have lots of data that is available, but then we don't know how do we bring in the data and bring this data to the table and make the solutions. So currently there is a limitation is there. In addition to real-time data that is available, has its own limitation. The company, many companies, many sectoral players are still dependent on the conventional approach. Another aspect is also happening when you go beyond the period boundary and address the issues of the scope 3 or value chain management, there you do also have a limitation in terms of data gathering, and that limitations is creating a barrier for the roadblocks towards decarbonizations. In addition to that one, also we have a lack of centralized repositories, so that is missing. And then we can see, already have mentioned that when we look into the scope 3, which is value chain, like today in the project boundary, you are producing it, but beyond that one, you are also sourcing the material. You are sourcing the material from the from the farmer. You are sourcing the material from the mines. So you are bringing in the materials by using the trucks, vehicles. You are using the trains. You are using the trucks. You are using the small 3-wheelers. All this transport mode has not been captured rightly. Even if it's captured at a certain level, it is only being captured how much money is going towards it, but then the kind of emission influence it has not been captured. In addition to that one, many of the value chain, when you produce it, we supply to the consumer, how the product is being used, where it is being stored, how it is being supplied, how it is being transported. Once it is end of the life is happening, what is happening to the product, nobody is really able to capture those data. I think so there is increasing pressures, and already company has started working towards it. But today, when you can look into that one, the coordinated efforts with the value chain players is missing, and that's one of the critical roadblocks. So today we can see there is increasing opportunities are there. It is not only risk, but we see that if we are able to cross over these roadblocks of the decarbonizations, we need huge amount of investment. We need around 13.5 trillion of investment by 2050 if we wanted to address it. And this creates also one of the critical component that we do have a barrier, but nothing is impossible. But this also shows us there is an opportunity ahead. Data management will play a bigger role in the future in addressing the decarbonization journey. So what we need to do to succeed in the decarbonizations, with a focus on the data science, we need to look into that one. The way we have been functioning, the way we are raising the fund, it may be the debt, it may be the equity, the way we raise the fund, because more and more the stakeholder or shareholders or investors are looking forward that we need to really be accountable in terms of our data, in terms of our emissions, and how we can do it. There we can see the data science will play a bigger role. It may be the realizing the carbon finance opportunity or energy saving as a services that can really create an opportunity for, and we need to treat the traditional financing in a different way and use the data to support the financing of how we can really raise the finance for the operating activities. We need to look into the holistic approach, organizational approach, where we need to have different stakeholders that need to interact with each other, and that really requires the new technologies of artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive data analytics. This data science will play a bigger role in bringing in and helping us in addressing these issues. We need to also see so there is an increasing demand from the financial regulators, and we can see there is a standard asset is happening. Unless we don't have a data, possibly we'll also face the problem. Then also we need to see that in emission data need to be captured in real time, which will help us in understanding the climate, the kind of climate risk we are facing, and it will help us in bringing those data input to the stakeholder, to the shareholder, and in addressing the critical barrier we are facing. In addition to the data analytics, it is really making climate-related decisions much more easier, much more. It can be faster. It can help us in realizing the fund. It can help us in addressing the new financing opportunity, including the carbon market, and also help us in reducing the disaster risk. So we need to have what we need to have that better control of the value chain. How we can do it? Because we need to understand our supply chain. We need to understand what are the emission sources. We need to understand our product portfolio. We need to really understand what are the consumer engagement we do have, and how do we engage with our stakeholder. That is becoming critical, because when we look into our supply chain, whatever we are sourcing and whatever product we are supplying to the market, it have number of stakeholders, it have number of consumers that are getting engaged. We have end of the life products. So how do we bring in the product, where it is going, where it is getting disposed, how it is being used, what is the lifetime of the products? If we wanted to capture, then we must need to look into the value chain, and data science can play a greater role in addressing these issues. In addition to that one, as we can see the carbon finance, it is taking up a central stage in the decarbonization journey. We can see $1 billion of transactions happening, and we are expecting that carbon market will be $1 trillion business in next few years. It will be one of the largest commodity which will really bring in greater benefit to many stakeholders. But today with the carbon market, we are seeing the number of critical comments and integrity issues being addressed. That how we make the carbon finance in true sense, true emission reductions, and how we bring in the carbon finance as accountable, so that people will start believing it, that it is truly reducing the emissions. For that purpose, what we need is it is required that we need to bring in the data. We need to use the remote sensing to understand how the tree grows, how the carbon capture is happening, how the agriculture sector is helping in improving the soil organic carbon, how farmer is adapting to the practices. if the industry is doing certain practices, how it is being done, if energy efficiency is being done, how it is being monitored, how it is being generalized, how it is being turned into the emission reduction potentials. All these things need to be really accounted, need to be transparent, and we need to bring the integrity into the platform. In addition to that one, when we look into that one, once we start using the data science, it brings in the credibility to our emission portfolio. So that means we can really influence the financier, we can influence the institutional investor so that they can be part of the journey, and we can possibly avail its cheaper sources of the finance for our portfolio. So that all requires we need to have a real-time data capture and emission impact on the carbon tax and offset. Because today, tomorrow, it will be the future will be that carbon costed economy where we need to have a carbon tax and we'll also have offsets. So if we wanted to realize and we need to understand what kind of tax implication we'll have, what kind of offsetting we need to have to make ourselves and our industries carbon neutral, we need to have more amount of data, and data science can play a bigger role on that. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. And I'm open to the question and answer. Once the sessions will be over, any questions, will be happy to answer to that.
Yeah, thank you, Niroj. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll. So just to add, to what you shared, there's, it's a vast subject. Of course, we can't cover all the topics here, but thanks for giving us some insights in industry decarbonization. What I remember is especially on the financing part. When we talk about carbon credits, of course, I saw a recent report by S&P wherein they did talk about certain carbon credits which are of high quality, which are kind of overshadowing low quality carbon credits. At the same time, there's a federal guideline which has been issued by US government. So that seems that there is a traction which is going to be there in carbon offsets and carbon credits, and we should keep watch on what's shaping up there. There's also a discussion on carbon border tax, and it's been opposed by various industry groups because it's kind of decrease the capital investment by corporates, and they may probably pass on the tax to their consumers or suppliers. So there are some interesting areas that are kind of shaping up in the industry, and we are going to look at. We'll have to keep watch on that. But thanks, Niroj, for sharing your insights. I'm going to quickly move to Raj, Dr. Sundaram, for his insights on location intelligence before we open up for Q&A. But in the meantime, if participants have any questions, please share your questions in the chat window, and we'll pick it from there. Dr. Sundaram, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
But we can't see your presentation.
Yeah, now?
No, not yet.
Okay. So what are you seeing now?
I can see you at the moment, not the slides.
Nothing?
Yeah, unless
now you see the presentation?
Not yet. Karthik, Kavita, do you see the presentation?
No.
Not yet.
No? Okay, let me see. Where is it? Okay, 1 second. Share the allow share window. Okay. Share this window. Okay. Share this window.
So while Dr. Sundaram is sharing his screen, let me also mention to the participants that this session is being recorded, and we'll share that recording on our channel so that you can view in case if you have missed out any topics. You need not take any screenshots of the slides that have been shared, but you can look at the recording at a later stage if you want
So
to
now can you see?
No, it's not visible as yet.
Not visible. I'm sharing it.
Um,
I think I shared. What? Change share.
What we can see is the Teams window.
Oh, I'm not sharing that one. Okay. 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 So now it's you can see the empty screen, yeah?
Yes, now it's visible.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So I think Dr. Satyam and Niroj both have given a brief overview about what is the significance of location intelligence and how do we how we use the latest technology like the remote sensing technology, real-time data, and all that one to make decision, right? So I think location intelligence, in my opinion, that it's a very powerful tool, and it is becoming an indispensable tool that that will unlock the hidden cost of savings and maximize the impact that we are going to make in our decarbonization efforts. So, because we know that environmental is not a major risk, not only a major risk for the environment, it is a major risk for the businesses. So we cannot fall behind on our decarbonization effort, right? So in that line, what today I'm going to give, I'm not sure how much time we have, but I will try to make it short because we have run out of time. I will give a brief overview about what is location intelligence and how industry should be leveraging location intelligence for their decarbonization efforts. So I will present a small case study related to that. Yeah. So I think we all understand what is business intelligence, right? A business intelligence is about a business data that we have, and we do the processing, and we create a business intelligence dashboard that the decision maker uses to make decisions, right? This is called business intelligence. So what is location intelligence then? Location intelligence is a process where we augment the spatial data. Spatial data meaning data related to our environment, our surroundings, the environmental parameters, the satellite images, the GPS data, the rainfall data, and climate impact data. All these data, this is all in spatial data about something that is happening around us on the globe, right? So this is called spatial data. And the live data is something like what is coming from the satellites or the IoT sensors, right? So if we augment all this data with our business data, what we create is a business intelligence dashboard integrated with the locational information, right? That is in simple term, it's called location intelligence, right? So we are making an intelligence out of business data integrated with our the entities or the environmental parameters that our business is interacting with, right? So that is location intelligence. Now, before moving forward, I want to make a small distinction between a term that is very popularly known to almost all of us, which is called GIS, right? There is some distinction between, not some distinction, there is a clear distinction between location intelligence and GIS. So location intelligence is a process of deriving actionable insights from the location-enabled business data. right? In other words, location intelligence integrates geographic context to the business data, right? But what is GIS? GIS is a tool for creating and managing spatial data, right? So there is a clear distinction. So location intelligence actually uses the geoprocessing tools and it exploits location enabled business data to develop location intelligence dashboards, right? And it is the location intelligence, it presents this information in such a way that it makes it easy and user friendly in a simplistic way, so that it is understandable to non-technical users to make decision effectively, right? But for GIS is a very specialized tool. It requires a specialized skills and knowledge to create and manage that locational data, right? So there is a very clear distinction between the two. So generally there is a perception that location intelligence and GIS, they are same, but in my opinion, G is for data, geographical, I is information as a system, which is hardware and database and everything, right? So location intelligence corresponds to the I that is in GIS, right? So let's see what is the how do we use the location intelligence. So there are a few things that that are very critical. I think Mr. Niroj briefly touched upon that one, that we need a really skilled mindset to actually leverage these specialized technology tools. So what we need is a spatial thinking. What is spatial thinking? I think it is that first thing is that every industry must have this mindset or a skill set where people understands how their business objects, how their business interacts with our surrounding environment, right? So we should understand that if we are developing our business, how it is going to impact our surroundings, how it is going to impact our environment, how it is going to impact our groundwater, everything, right? So we are developing a mine, it is going to impact groundwater, it is going to impact the CO2 emissions, right? So all these things must be taken into account. So we need a mindset that understands all everything, not just about the business, right? So we should, it is very essential that this skill set should understand how to visualize this data, how to analyze the data, how to interpret the information that is generated by processing and analyzing this data. In essence, it's about how different elements of our business interact with the environment, in short, right? Then there are a lot of tools available, like GIS tools, we call it. GIS tools, they provide analytical tools also, right? So there are a lot of tools available like ArcGIS, QGIS, GraphGIS, which are open source. Then we have a lot of libraries, Python libraries available called GeoPandas, etc. And we have open source APIs available from big players like Google and Microsoft, which can be leveraged and integrated into our existing ecosystem to take advantage of integrating this locational information and make a better decision, right? Of course, there is a data. Now, the data is the king. Yes, of course, the data is the king because everything runs on the data. We all understand our business data, right? Where is our businesses? Where is our market? Where is our suppliers? Where we have to mine? Where we have to supply? We all know about these ones. So there is a lot of information, a lot of location information as well is available in the businesses. But what we don't understand is how do we integrate that information, or how we take advantage of this information and do the analytics or the location intelligence with that data, right? So what we also need to know is how our businesses, say for example, how the logistics works, how the our transportation network works, how the vehicles move from point A, from the business locations or from the suppliers to the market, and how they move around the cities, how they impact the environment, how much emissions they are, how much CO2 they are emitting, and how it is impacting, which route they should be taking to minimize the impact on the environment. What time, for example, in Delhi, we see that trucks are not allowed in the daytime, right, so to reduce the carbon. But does that impact, does that have an effect on the environment? I'm not sure, right? Because there are a lot of other variables that impacts the CO2 emission. It could be the traffic movement, it could be the topography, right? Then we need to understand like how these things are emitting, how producing the CO2 emissions, how the businesses are impacting the demography or the population in the surrounding area. Maybe they are polluting the groundwater. Maybe they are disposing their waste in surrounding, which is in turn impacting the groundwater, right? Or polluting the rivers, which is in turn polluting so many downstream areas, right? So there are so many things that need to be understood. Apart from that, there are climatic impacts which are adversely impacting the businesses, right? So like floods, droughts, heat waves, tropical storms, etc. These have an adverse impact because we have to produce. Businesses have to produce something. They have to go to the market. But these events, they disrupt the supply chain, right? So all these factors need to be taken care or need to be taken into account in order for the businesses to run sustainably, right? So when we are doing a business intelligence, that's the reason why we have to incorporate or embed all these location or spatial information, real-time information into the system to make an effective decision. So how do we use the location intelligence? Well, I already mentioned that we have a lot of tools that can be utilized and integrated in the existing business systems in order to exploit these locational data, which is a lot of data is available. Like for example, the satellite information, the CO2 emissions, or what is the current weather patterns, the satellite images, right? These are real-time data which is available in publicly, free of cost. A lot of them are free of cost, like the environmental parameters, CO2 and nitrogen, etc. All these are already being captured and they are available free, right? So all these can be utilized to make an effective decision. So let me take you through a very simple but a very effective use case, which is applicable to most of the industries, right? I was asked for a very simple, seemingly simple problem, but I don't know why it was a management or a decision maker's nightmare. I don't know why it became like that, but there was a simple problem. There is a depot where the fuel is filled in a trucks to take it to the petrol station, and there were like 100 petrol stations. There are 100 petrol stations in that country, and the trucks take the fuel from the depots to these petrol stations. And suddenly one fine day, after a lot of investment in the road infrastructure, and after all the networks was built, road network was built, they realized that these trucks should not be passing through tunnels or underpasses because they pose a serious threat because of high CO2 emissions, and there might be a fire. There could be a fire risk in the tunnels, in the long tunnels, deep tunnels, and underpasses, right? So they said like these trucks need to be rerouted, and they should new routes should be planned for them, right? So they cannot pass through tunnels, right, because of these hazards, right? It looks like a very simple problem. Anybody can go to the Google map and say, okay, start point and end point. Everybody is familiar with that one. We could have simply created those routes, right? But unfortunately, it wasn't like that. It became a very big problem, and it went through the Ministry of Transportation Planning, Ministry of Police Department, Traffic Department, Public Works everybody tried with their own concepts and ideas, but they could not create those almost like 200 routes to alternate routes to take the trucks. Why? Because when the trucks were moving from depot to petrol station, they were going through the highways where there were hardly any obstructions. It was a very simple flow. But when they had to reroute the trucks, they were faced with a lot of challenges because they had to pass through the busy roads. They had to pass through sharp turns, and there are VIP roads, there are public events, and all those things became a problem to the routing problem, right? So finally, they came to the engineering information team, and they asked, is there a way we can come up with some solution for that one? And in location intelligence, this is like a standard problem. We do it every day, right? How to plan for market research, or how to plan for a routing problem. These are standard problems that are defined in the spatial analytics, right? So we know what is the truck information and what is the origin and destination. This is a known fact, right? But apart from that, the spatial data also contains what type of roads we have in the country, what is the traffic patterns in the country, what is the congestion information, what is the slope and curvature of the road, because trucks cannot go through sharp turns, or they cannot go under a structure which has a low clearance, and there are restrictions in place in the city because of the VIP roads or other things. And then there are other external factors like weather disruptions, or the public events, or the natural disasters, right? All these need to be taken care in order to do the routing, right? So this problem, I think prior to using the location intelligence, they were struggling for several months. And with using location intelligence, I think it was solved in a couple of just over a week or two maximum, right? And they came up with all the routes by a click of button, probably, right? So I think that's a use case. So what I want to say is that location intelligence is very essential tool for moving the business for a sustainable future, right? And location intelligence, logistic companies, they can slash the carbon footprint if they use these location intelligence tool effectively. They can optimize their delivery. They can identify how to look for alternative fuels to power their journeys. And all these things can be made a reality if you use the location intelligence powerfully. So I think my final advice, use the location intelligence to decarbonize. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sundaram. Thank you so much for this insightful presentation and sharing a use case. I think the transportation led carbon emissions are somewhere around 17 to 18% in terms of overall GHG emission. And transportation is certainly a very important area for industries to look at, because that's where the supply chain or the value chain that comes into play, and there could be an element of scope 3 emission which can be also taken care of. But thank you so much for your insightful session. Now we'll move to Q&A. But before that, I'd like to thank all the participants for bearing with us. We exceeded the time that we have initially thought for this conversation. But considering the fact that it's such a rich topic, even what we have covered today is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot that can be covered in the climate analytics, especially from the perspective of decarbonizing the industries. But do share your questions, raise your hand, and ask your question. We'll probably have 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes for Q&A, as we have already exceeded our time. So we might have time constraints. While we wait for participants to share their questions, I have a few questions that I can begin with. So I'll probably begin with Dr. Satyam. Uh, Dr. Satyam, you talked about data science and climate analytics. So how do you use or leverage data science specifically to identify high impact areas for decarbonization within industries?
Well, what can I say? It's everywhere. The simple answer. But as Niroj mentioned earlier, that the industries have significant data over the collected over the years from
Hmm.
almost all aspects of their business, right?
Hmm.
Now the question is, what is our what I should say, aptitude, and as well as what is our desire, how much we really want to take advantage of it to actually reduce the carbon footprint, right? One is a theoretical concept that we can do it. The other one is the practical aspect, right? So, for example, if we look at simple things like what's the emission data that they have, right? Or the scope 1 data, scope 2 data that they may have, uh, and how fast are they looking at it, how often they are looking at it, is it automated, so that you can actually modify in real time, so that you can get the most elements of it. And so pretty much any industry, I think, focusing on a single workflow first, and then figuring out a methodology as to how to use the carbon footprint data for that workflow, and then actually scaling it up for other workflows is the easiest way to do it. And as a result, I think you will get you when you do it for one case, you will learn all the challenges, not only with the process but also with the data. Like, how do I integrate the data? What is expected quality versus what is the real quality of the data? And how do I actually mitigate that, or how do I actually improve the quality of data going forward? Because historical data, you really cannot change anything. So those are the areas, I think, focusing on one product, one service, one workflow, and then scaling it up slowly. And then actually after you do one, two, three, and then after that you can actually do the enterprise wide. And that's a way you can have a highest impact in terms of decarbonization.
Yeah, I agree. So, data would certainly streamline the journey towards decarbonization. It will shorten that journey, as
Yeah.
you would have certain insights from data. But just in case if there are, certain organizations or enterprises, they like in quality historical emission data. How can they go for data collection? How for data modeling, especially for their organization, in case if they do not have a quality emission data?
I see. If you don't have quality emission data, then there is nothing you can do really. You can actually look at the data that you have, whatever quality it may be, and then trying to understand how can I fill that quality gap, right? Rather than saying I will wait someday to have the best quality data. But what is missing? Is it the values that are entered in your data are wrong, or for a certain parameter? Is it that you just don't have the data at the right frequency, or is it that the somebody has actually manipulated the data to present something so that you're actually you don't have the provenance in the data? So question is, what aspect of the quality are we talking about, right? And
Yeah.
as a result, what we can do is start looking at it, whatever the data we have in the enterprise, and making a report or whatever you want to call it, as to saying these are the features and these are the challenges, and this is how we are going to address them. And how do we then eventually automate those so that your data does not become bad quality going forward? In fact,
Mm.
one of the practices we used to do some 20 plus years ago, when we used to get data, especially in the internet domain, is it would not enter the database unless its quality has been actually checked automatically. What what nowadays people are talking about, like in RPA. We used to do those RPA kind of things 20 years ago, and no data will actually enter into the database unless its characteristics are actually to the specifications for that particular workflow. All right. And then in that sense, those can be implemented. Nowadays, it's much easier to implement such checks and balances. Even in the oil and gas industry, when the data is coming from various sensors, typically if you are on the field, it gets aggregated on a particular site, a particular server on the remote site, and then it is actually pushed into the back office. There are checks and balances put already there, that this sensor has sent out these data elements, check whether they are within the range. If not, send it a message to the right technician to verify that the numbers are within the range, or there is something wrong happening with the sensor. So these technology exists to actually improve the quality of the data as it goes into this data stores.
Right. Yeah. So the one problem is certainly having the right data. The second, focus area should be having the right checks and balances, so that you can feed right data to your system for climate analytics.
Exactly right. The science is there, right? The science is there. The engineering is there. We are not talking about all these fields are significantly science and engineering driven. It's not random marketing
Exactly.
kind of a data, so to say. Right, every process has some boundary conditions. So you can actually you can verify those elements.
Right. Yeah. So I'll go to Dr. Sundaram. Dr. Sundaram, earlier we had a conversation regarding assessing renewable energy potential. So how would you see location intelligence can help in terms of identifying the renewable energy potential?
Can you repeat that question? There was a fire alarm.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So my question is with reference to the assessment of renewable energy potential for enterprises, and how location intelligence can be leveraged for that assessment.
Yeah, so location intelligence, yes, it can help in many ways actually. So as I mentioned, location intelligence gives us a complete information about our surroundings. So we know theoretically, using all the technology available, the satellite image, we know where, for example, renewable energy, where we have the best site to set up wind farms, or where should we set up solar farms, where definitely they require an optimum conditions. There should be a continuous wind flow in order for the wind farms to work, right? There should be an ample sunlight over the years so that we can produce enough electricity, right? So these two parameters, these are very common, easy to understand. But then how do we leverage the location intelligence? Yes. So we can explore. We have to use a lot of information that is available already. For example, we know how the terrain looks like. We call it topographic data. If we know the topography, we essentially know where the sunlight will be more. So if it is a mountain, for example, we know which face of the mountain is most visible to the sunlight, right? Where we have the most light reaching to that surface, and how much time it is illuminated, for example. Of course, and we know similarly for the wind farms, we know where we have the wind blowing most of the time, which is optimum for running these things, right? Wind farms. So these are the things, these are the parameters which are readily available. The satellite data is readily available. The sunlight information is readily available. The CO2 level is available in the public domain, and it is continuously updated. Right now, if somebody asks like what is the CO2 emission in Jammu Kashmir, we can see that one. right? Surprisingly, yesterday when I was looking at the data, the whole country was looking green, but there was a part of Jammu Kashmir which was showing a very high CO2 emission, and it was very surprising. And I don't know why it was, but that was the case. So the data is available, current information is available. I think businesses, we have to use all this information. So we don't have to build a lot of data. Businesses don't have to build the data, they have to exploit the data. And they have to just use these analytical tools and the capabilities that we already have to analyze and make our decision effective.
Thank you so much. That's quite insightful. I think that's an area which is going to be, as we see, a lot of focus which is now there on renewable energy, especially in Indian scenario. So there's certainly going to be a lot of application of location intelligence, which corporates might be leveraging or may like to leverage in order to enhance their renewable energy potential. But thank you. Niroj, I'll have this is going to be last question as we already exceeded our time, but this is a quick question to you. You talked about some regulatory frameworks and the compliance that needs to be done by corporate. So how do you suggest that corporates or enterprises can overcome regulatory frameworks and can comply with what the government is expecting, and how they can encourage, because at the moment some of the frameworks are still shaping up. So yeah, any thoughts that you have in this regard?
Yeah, before this one, I wanted to compliment Dr. Raj. As you said, Kashmir, there is a why CO2 emission was from Kashmir. If you can see, there is a forest fire is happening in Kashmir for the last 3 days, 4 days. So that is resulting all part of the India is green because mostly rain is happening. So majority part of green, but there is emission from the Kashmir. So that's one of the reasons. So I am trying to relate that one. Vishen, in this recent past also we have lots of controversy in terms of the coal, particularly the coal sector, in terms of calorific value, in terms of the where it is getting sourced. Indirectly, it is only emissions, right? Whatever coal we burn, the less inferior quality coal we burn, we have a larger amount of emissions. So which translate into some amount of emissions that is putting into the consumer indirectly. Today, whatever electricity we are paying, if the emissions is more, less quality of the coal is being burned. Although directly we are not knowing that okay, that we are paying higher, but in terms of it is higher emissions and we are paying a higher tariff for that one. The tariff remains same, but you are getting electricity, lower amount of electricity. So if you see that one, people have started using the digital intelligence, and then that's why they are able to also relate from the where the material is coming in, where it is getting sourced, and then but that, as Dr. Satyam said, there is always a human intervention is happening. Everything is not automated. Okay, so then we do take the sample, we do the testing at the laboratory, and then it is the every interface we do have certain level of human intervention is happening. So if we can take out those things, I think so this kind of issues will go away. In addition, that's why the beauty of the data science and then climate change is that when you talk about climate change, it's almost taking out everything in today's domain, right? So all part of the things. So if we can really use in true sense and bring in the high integrity and transparency system into the system, in addition to the emission data, we can possibly capitalize and get great amount of co-benefits. We should not forget when we talk about a climate analytics and the climate and the how do we really data science help us in terms of addressing the climate change. One of the major components is that co-benefits. How do we bring in the co-benefits to the society and communities? That is critical. With the regulatory components, I think so the regulatory aspects is looking into this aspect. It is trying to bring in more accountability in terms of the consumer engagement, in terms of the consumer rights, in terms of industry integration, and the regulator themselves can truly get a real-time analysis of what is happening on the ground. So I think so. India is seeing the first level of domestic carbon market. It is one touch which will help us in addressing 7 sectors. But please understand, if this kind of issue is happening, whether the calorific value is right or not, and it have a climate angle in terms of CO2 emission, tomorrow this overall dispute it will not be addressed in terms of only how much somebody has paid and how much calorific value was there for the power. It will also be have an implication, serious implication in terms of the domestic carbon market, because there is a price. So we can really relate many aspects, and then the regulatory component can really address by using the data science and data inputs, and then really make it a more transparent market ecosystem.
Thank you, Niroj. So, we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. So I'm just, repeating the words that Barack Obama shared sometime, a few years back. But that is so relevant today. So while we are concluding this session, I'd like to thank, speakers. It's a heartful, I extend my heartful thanks to our distinguished speakers, Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy, Dr. Raj Mukta Sundaram, and Niroj for joining us and sharing invaluable insights. The discussion that we had today highlighted some critical role of climate analysis in our decarbonization journey. But as I shared, it's a vast subject, and what we have covered today is only a tip of the iceberg. So, but thank you for joining this inaugural session of the Countdown Talk. We would be continuing this series, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.